What's going on, everyone? It's MG from Computer Science 494. We are going to look at first assignment, or sort of the collaborative assignment that is going to be the user generator for our Active Directory domain, the CMPS 494.SELU domain. Now, initially, I had considered, let's just write everything from scratch. Let's create random users using maybe like a first name, last name, census data, something like that. And I had already written, I don't know, probably a couple hundred lines of code to deal with that and start massaging data around and everything. And then I said, that's going to be a lot for, I think, one presentation, one of these videos. And most of you probably either have never ever looked at PowerShell or are just starting to look at PowerShell. Maybe you haven't done a lot of it. So what I decided to do instead is use the random user.me sort of API. The nice thing about this is we can get a lot of information. We can get the random user with all of the, or a lot of the data that we care about. We can get specifically things like, hello ladies, ooh, and guys too. We can get, people, images, and, full-blown sort of everything about it. So that's pretty awesome. We're going to use this. Specifically, I've already read the documentation, I've already looked at how we're going to get it, so I can close that. But that's what we're going to do. The primary point of this is to sort of get an introductory feeling to how I expect you to script and conventions to follow in PowerShell. These are practices that I try to follow in my day-to-day work life. They're not 100% perfect. I find myself breaking them frequently because I'm trying to get better at doing this. So while I won't, crucify you or anything if you don't do this exactly like this way every time, try to follow it. Every function you write, every time, every commit, look back before you commit it and go, is this readable? Can I look at this? Can I follow it? Can I break this down more? And if you can, don't commit it, or commit it and then put a note, needs to be fixed. And do yourself a favor and don't make every commit message needs to be fixed, right? So let's. I'll try to go ahead and code a couple sample functions that we will use. There'll be code that's delivered to you on GitLab or CS-Git, but I'll try not to do the entire assignment. I'll try to just start and skeletonize the whole thing, or at least a majority of it. And then at the same time sort of show you what I expect. So the primary idea behind this, and I'll just kind of write a little comment block real quick. So effectively, and I'll use a bulk comment block. So effectively, we want to have some sort of process that can generate, I guess, let's do this, purpose. We want to generate sample user data. And the whole point is it's going to create users in our AD system. And these users are going to have a lot of information about them, right? We're going to have, the way that I kind of thought of it, it would have several different types of information. We'd have like categories of information. We would have things like system-based information. And system information would be things like a username, anything that is kind of going to be automatically created or whatever, a domain. Because we might eventually, not right now, but we might eventually have multiple domains in our forest. Currently, it's just the CMPS 494 domain, but it might be more later on. We don't know. So we don't want to not specify the domain right now and then it bite us later. A unique sort of ID, some number that is going to, in essence, be just sort of like a social security number or some sort of W number scenario. And we might add on and change these outside of this video. This is kind of get us started. We'll have an organizational set of parameters. So let's call it org. These are going to be things that are pertinent to any organization or company or sort of at a business layer. So whenever we think of users in our system, you typically don't have users in your system just because you like having a bunch of people in your system. You do that because you want to organize and you want to sort of do certain things based on other certain things. So organizationally, we would have things like a job title, or I would just call it title. That's the actual attribute name. Title, your office phone. Things like company, so maybe you work within a different company. Now, maybe all of the companies are named the same, but maybe this is sort of, maybe we're holding the directory for, we're the domain for a bunch of companies. Maybe we're the parent company and there's a bunch of sister companies underneath us. So instead of doing separate domains in a forest, we decided to do separate companies in the same domain. That's fine too. Or maybe we're going to be like Alphabet and we're going to have Google and YouTube and all that stuff separate, but internal as well. Department, which is sort of inside of a company, and I guess we could do that. We could say that, and realistically, we could we could nest these even further. We could say, oh, this is actually a title for a company or a title in a department. We can keep these all at the same layer though. That's fine. So we have department. Then we have things like maybe inside of the department we have a certain division. For instance, I work for Office of Technology, but the division is client connectivity. Now, people would argue that no, the department's client connectivity, and there's a separate department called Office of Technology, but that doesn't imply any sort of, any sort of hierarchy, and it's very flat. So if we could make use of department and division, that would be great. Don't know if we can yet, but we'll see. And then, of course, like an office, like the office address or some sort of location about your office inside your organization. Let's leave that alone for now. Let's talk about personal information. So personal information, we can maybe look at things like, clearly identifiable information. So like first name, or let's just do name. Inside that we have first name, middle name, and last name. And we might not care about this right now. We're gonna see if we actually care about the names that in that detail. We might just care about first and last. We've got, in addition to name, we've got things like phone, personal phone numbers. So things like our home phone number, and then maybe a mobile number or a cell phone number. And then something that we are able to do in Active Directory that is actually really nice, and something that I really liked from randomuser.me, is that we can store a photograph in Active Directory. It's not very typical. In fact, there's a ton of reasons to do it if you're running your own Exchange server or you're doing something with Exchange, something that where people are going to see you kind of in a signature or in a photograph signature type thing. It doesn't really show up in AD until you start logging into Windows machines, and then it kind of populates that little generic user picture, user profile image. And we probably won't ever see this, but it's neat to get the feel of it because there are certain little hindrances with doing a certain little kind of screwy ways that it deals with things. So I thought it would be nice to kind of do that. And then let's talk about location. And this is going to be information relating to the physical location of this person. Now, it might be underneath personal. I have to look. Let's assume that it's not going to be right now. We can always change it later. It's going to be an easy change because we're breaking it up. But we might want to put location underneath personal, only because it depends on how Active Directory kind of has that relationship between the location information, whether or not it's personal or not. There's a big long document. I refer to it. I don't memorize anything from it. So they've got things like P.O. Box. We got things like address, the basic stuff, street address, city, state, zip code or postal code, I guess, and the country. And if we are doing something with multiple countries, say we have a business or an organization that's got more than just U.S. residents. In this case, I don't think we're going to go for that, mainly because of how ridiculous that actually is. We would want to have something other than the United States of America for that if we were doing more than one country, which right now we're not going to, but maybe later. Because there are certain things that we have to kind of deal with whenever we go to other countries. For instance, we might not have standard phone numbers, where it is in the format, number, dash, number, dash, num. This is the format that we want to use for our phone numbers. Well, in Britain or Europe, there's tons of long numbers or whatever. We need to specify some sort of ground rules about how we're going to get this information. We don't want to, if possible, ever hard code information. That's something I shouldn't have to say. I mean, it's 2017. We've been developing for a while now. This is a 400 level class. Hopefully most of y'all are seniors or juniors. We don't hard code things as much as possible. So whenever we know that the domain is cmps494.salu.edu, it's very easy to hard code this. We're not going to. Instead, we're going to do something like, and I'm not on a domain, this isn't my domain machine, but I believe the code is something like get domain and then .forest maybe. That is the code that will generate the current domain for who we are, what we're using, and that will allow us to, and I don't know that I'm not on the domain, so yeah, I don't have a domain for us to get, but this is sort of what we're going to use to get that more or less. Username is actually going to be generated, so I guess let's not talk about that right now. Unique ID, we need to make sure that this is maybe a 9-digit number, so just a 9-digit number. Maybe with a capital U or something. We'll talk about that in class a little bit. But anyway, so that let's talk about what we have to do in order to generate this sample user info, because we need to. The very first thing that we need to do is we need to get the info. So get random user info, or generate random user info from web. And what we're going to do with this is we're going to write a function that's going to look at, we just say get random users. That's fine. It's going to go to randomuser.me, and it's going to download and parse and effectively return an object to wherever this is. And in order to do that, we are going to want to get sort of a number. We want to say get random users from web, give it a number, and it will go out and get that many users back and return a list of those users. So we'll say the whole purpose is to get users from randomuser.me, takes in an int. That is the number of users to generate. And then returns users in a list. Let's do that real quick, because that's not going to take that long, because the code's so easy based off the documentation on randomusers.me. So whenever we're going to start a function or a method or something in PowerShell, they're called functions, and we start with a capital F. A lot of things automatically put a lowercase f, and if you're using a different ISE, I don't recommend it because PowerShell ISE is fine, but if you're using a different ISE and it puts a lowercase f, that's just going to look a little different than what we're used to dealing with and what we're going to hopefully push out. I like the capital F because it's most of the time, if you're not dealing with a function, all of the variables start with lower cases. So function with a capital F sort of stands out a little bit in my mind. Again, just some convention that I'm used to using. So function, we're going to call it generate dash random users from web. And notice how I'm camel casing the name, but how I put the first sort of verb, the action word, separated from the rest with dash. I could put get, maybe. Get probably is a better term to use, because there's getters and setters. We're never going to set random users from web because we're never going to, reply anything to randomusers.me. So get random users from web is fine. We can do that. And remember, we have to send it a number. Now, we could do something ugly like number or something. We could do this. This is disgusting in my opinion. Some people like it. This is very old, very Java-like syntax. We could even say, and it has to be an integer, so we could cast it like that. I don't like this. This is disgusting. If you're doing this and you think this is a good thing, you need to reorient, you're completely changed, look at your priorities, just, don't hate life too much. There are better ways of doing it. Now, the way I'm about to show you, and all jokes aside, there's 6 different ways to do things in PowerShell almost every time. Some of them I choose to follow and I think are great. Some of them I don't follow because they're just ridiculous in my opinion. There's definitely ways and reasons to do things in PowerShell a certain way, like, performance-wise. I don't think we're going to deal with that right now, but what I'm about to show you is, in my opinion, the best, most affording way to start and deal with functions. Now, we're not going to be doing anything crazy in this function. I mean, we're literally going to be asking the web to give us something, and we're going to be converting it from the format that it gives us into a list object or into some sort of object like that. And most of that PowerShell is going to handle. If we were doing more than just that, we would want to actually put something called commandlet binding. We want to put commandlet binding right there. And what this is going to do, I'm going to spell it right. What this would do is this would allow us to sort of give more power to probably spelled that right, but maybe it's commandlet bind. I don't know. This would give us more power. It would allow advanced functions, sort of some default functionality to run in PowerShell. But because we're not doing much more than just returning some information and converting a little bit, we don't need to worry about this. This is going to be sort of a one-page script, we're only going to have one file. We're never going to go out of this file. So we don't need to worry about any of that crazy stuff, but we would normally want to put commandlet binding there. I'm not going to this time because it's kind of pointless, but just know that. Being pragmatic, that's the important thing. Be pragmatic whenever you are coding or scripting. It doesn't matter if you've got conventions, if your conventions are kind of just arbitrary. So be pragmatic with your conventions, I guess. So what we're going to do is we're going to specify a param setting. This param setting is a block of code that will allow us to specify some parameters clearly, but also allow us to specify some sort of requirements of those parameters. So I'm going to specify the parameter command, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in some options. So for instance, we want the number of users. We want to make sure that that's mandatory. So I can actually specify mandatory equals true, and that's Boolean true. And what that'll allow is whatever command or whatever attribute that I put past that, so I'll also cast it to an int, and then I'll say this is going to be the command number, or the option number. What that's going to do is that's going to say whenever we call this, I can't call get random users from web by default with no information in there. It has to have number in it. There's also a ton of other parameter options. We'll look into those probably in a separate video or in class, but that's the only thing we need. So given a number, that takes in an integer number of users to generate number. Given that, we're good. So if I was to come down here and I was to start writing get random users from web and I hit space dash, we see that it sort of fills in number already. And then we put something like 100, and if I was to run this, well, nothing's going to happen because this isn't doing anything yet, but we see that it at least works. So what we're going to do is we're going to put all of this on one line because we only had one thing there. And that's just pretty easy to look at in my opinion. Notice I'm spacing this out a little bit. I'm making sure that there's enough room for these guys. If I have some sort of different closing parentheses, angle brackets, I give them a little bit of space so that they can breathe. There's no real reason to that other than readability. Kind of up to you how you want to do that. But I think that giving it a space is fine. It looks really nice in my opinion. So let's go ahead and do the bulk of this work. In PowerShell, there is the invoke REST method. Where is it? Yeah, there we go. Well, there it is. And the command that we want to push in there is actually the format CSV sort of return command from randomuser.me. I looked it up earlier. I'm going to use a single quote. Again, single quotes and double quotes, they really don't mean much different in PowerShell right now. They do later, but I would say use single quotes often, as much as possible, until you because you can always use double quotes inside single quotes, and it's fine. It escapes it without having to expressively escape it. So use single quotes. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just write this out: HTTPS : it's going to be randomuser.me, and then we're going to call the API. We are going to pipe in the result size as going to be, we're going to do an appendation to this call. It's going to be that number that we've submitted, and that's going to be hopefully, 100, 500 or whatever. We are going to specify the nationality, and the reason we're going to do that is for formatting reasons. We want to make sure that we don't get crazy amounts of people from other countries like Iran, and we're going to have like weird character encoding issues because their names aren't written in typical typical UTF-8 encoded whatever. And then we're going to give it the format equals CSV function. And what that's going to do is it's going to deliver a CSV file to us, more or less. What we're going to then do, and this is a nice thing about PowerShell and Linux, is that we can do standard output, standard input piping. So the results from this invoke REST method is actually going to get passed to this second method before being returned to the interpreter. So, or to the actual the function. So what we want to do is, since that's a CSV that we're getting back, we want to convert from CSV, and that's going to convert it into an object for us. So I'll go ahead and I will encapsulate all of that in parentheses, and then I want to return this. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm just going to run this snippet of code right there, and then I'm going to give us a bigger command window. So I'm going to get random users from web. I'm going to give it 2 users. Whenever I run this, it says invoke REST method not found. Let's see, what did I do wrong? Invoke REST method, HTTPS, number. I think I may have mistyped something. Oh, yeah, my bad. This isn't supposed to be that. That's supposed to be that. Okay. Now let's try this. Hopefully that was embarrassing, guys. All right, now let's rerun this code, and hopefully, yeah, that's what we expected. So whenever we run that code now, we generated 2 separate users. We get gender, we get titles, we get, and this is Mrs. or Mrs. or Mr. or whatever. Cassandra Harper, Proctor's Page Road, West Covina, South Dakota. We get a postal code, which is nice. Email, which is nice. Username, which can be fun. An actual like information regarding the the password. That's not a very strong password, Miss Harper. And the nice thing is we also get information like this. So if I can pull over this, we get a nice little example image that we'll use later, which is pretty nice. So what we can do with this now is, if I was to say create a user's object and pipe in, or not pipe in, but store the results of, say, 500. Well, we get 500 users back very quickly. We can even count it, make sure we have 500, cool. And we can use it like a normal array. We can get the 7th person, Dwayne Dean, or the 70th person, we get Jackie Gordon. With this very simple method, we get tons of users back. I guess it should be users, not user. And we did that in, well, admittedly, an entire API, but we've got just 2 lines, really just one. If you took this out, you can make this 1 line. There's just no reason to do that. So we've got the random users from the web, and we've got we want to fill in this information. So let me put this side by side real quick. So username, we've got a username, which, it's not the best username. Jackie Gordon. It's not the best username, Golden Butterfly 905, but it seems like a real username. The domain we're able to get from using this command, get domain.forest. Unique ID. So we actually have the social security number down here, which probably is going to be unique. I don't know how they randomize their information, but it's probably going to be unique. We're able to maybe strip out the ID. We can do stuff like if we were to let's see, I think we're still using user 40. So user or user 70. Is this Jackie Gordon? Yeah, it's Jackie Gordon. So if we were to say something like dot, I don't know, dot ID dot value, and notice how they didn't subdivide out their objects. So this is actually the string representation of this instead of that. We would get that. So what we could do is do something like, either remove or replace rather. We'd want to replace the dashes with just empty strings, and we'd get that, and then we'd probably want to do something like, u, and that would give us sort of our unique identifier, something very similar to this. So we've got that. That's in there. We've got organizational office phone. We've got phone number right here, and we've got a cell phone number, but let's assume, since we don't have any office information right here, let's assume that this is going to be the home phone, and this is going to be the mobile phone. So we've got these two taken care of, and they're in the correct format already, which is convenient. First name, middle name, last name. Well, we've got first name and last name. Let's go ahead and ditch the middle name. We can get rid of that for right now. P.O. Box address, city, state, zip code, country. We've got the street address. We've got we don't have a P.O. box, which is probably okay. We could probably get rid of P.O. box as well, since we don't have that. Postal code good, South Carolina good, Fort Worth good, and address book good. Country is always going to be United States, but again, we'd want to not explicitly say that. We'd want to maybe key in on this nationality and convert this to either keep it U.S. or convert this to United States of America. We want to switch that out. Photo's good because we got 3 different sizes. It looks like we've got a full-blown, a thumbnail, and a medium to use. I'll have to figure out what the default resolution is on the intended resolution for that photo attribute in Active Directory. We don't have, from what it looks like, we don't have any of this organizational information, which is, I guess, going to be something we're going to have to actually create. Everything else we can get. So we killed most of this with this one function. So after we have this, what we want to do is we probably want to massage the data. And data massaging sounds weird, but effectively, like, we want to take things like South Carolina and we want to capitalize the S, capitalize the C. We want to convert Oak Lawn Avenue into something that's going to be a little bit easier. So we want to be able to massage that data. Give me a second. Okay, so we've got that. Let's just say, we could say fix user data, or really this should be inside of, I guess this should be inside of something called, we're getting the random data, maybe make users or create users, create random users. And what we want to do with this is we want it to pretty much get those random users from the web, and we want to take them and convert them into AD specific. We want to convert it into sort of the actual AD versions of those users. So convert or add users to AD. This is that's the whole purpose. It takes in. Let's go ahead and say it takes in an individual user. and then it returns nothing. Nothing. Okay, so, and it's going to sort of do this. It's going to build out this sort of thing. And we don't need to do it in line. I'm going to show you in line, but then that's because this is going to be part of the assignment, is that you're going to have to actually do this bit. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's create a function. Remember, capital F function. And we're going to say create random users. Now, if we were to look at the user object that we were dealing with over here, user 70, because this is an individual user. This is Jackie Gordon. If we were to get type, which tells us exactly what it is, we see that it is a PS custom object. We're going to be dealing with those a lot. This is just sort of a generic way to say it's a list, it's an array list, it's a hash map, it's a custom object. It's something that we can deal with and have objects within objects and do things like that. So it's really, really nice. What we want to do is we want to create a parameter, and it's going to be a mandatory thing. I can have this without a parameter in there. It's going to be mandatory equals true. And then it's going to be a PS custom object. So and it's going to be called user. So that's going to be what we use for our, that's effectively the username that we're going to use, or the variable name we're going to use for user. For the user passed in. So what we can do is we can take our user, since we know that it's going to have all of these attributes. It's going to have gender, name, title. Not that gender really matters, but it's going to have name, title, first, last, things like that. We can go ahead and start filling out this. So we could do something like, and I don't have the Active Directory plugin installed. Yeah, I don't have it. New AD user is what we eventually want to use, but we're not going to do anything with Active Directory yet. We don't need to do anything with that. We just know that we need information in this sort of format. We want to get that this way. So we've got a bunch of users. They're sort of in this crap way. We're missing data, so we need to generate a separate user. We want to generate sort of a, I guess, an appropriate format. So we might want to rethink this, right? We're generating the random users. We've got the random users here. Maybe we should pass this list to another list that's something like massage. Let's do that. So this is going to take in an individual user, and that's going to add it to AD. But before we do that, we want to do something like maybe massage users from web. Sounds like a good one. The whole point of this is to kind of fill in the gaps and fix the data from randomusers.me. So we're going to fill in those gaps and fix the data from randomusers.me. It's going to take in an entire list. So a list of users from randomusers.me, and then it's going to return a list of users, but these are going to be like better users or whatever. So that's the way we can look at that. So let's leave this where it is with just nothing there, and let's come down here, function massage, or you know what? Let's not say massage. Let's say fix users from web. Let's change it up here. Fix. Let's go ahead and say add. We'll name that add. So we'll try to keep it pretty straightforward. Add, fix, get. It's going to take in a. It's going to be a list of PS custom user. So I think that is param, maybe parameter. Ooh, don't hit tab on parameter. It is crazy. Parameter, we want it to make sure it's mandatory, equals true. And I'm pretty sure this is going to be, how would I do that? We could leave it blank. We could not type it and it would be fine just as long as we didn't do anything crazy. But I don't know how I feel about that. I guess it would be like something like this. I think that's okay. It effectively says it has to be a list of custom PS custom objects. So if we were to come over here and we were to say user, this is the list that we kind of prepared in the back end. If we get this, it should say, oh, it's an object. Well, okay, let's just do that. It's some generic AF sort of list. Okay, cool, that'll work. So that's the users. So fix users from web. Effectively what we want to do is we want to iterate through this and we want to create a separate list of better users. And we might want to have some helper function to do this. And I'm going to leave the helper function up to you, but this is how we eventually want it to come out sort of like this, which means that, I mean, we've got to generate all of this data, all the organizational data. We've got to generate that ourselves and sort of randomly pick from a list of things. So maybe departments, maybe we want like from a list, like we'll have a list and we'll do that. Title will be also sort of from a list, I guess. We might have to create a distribution though, because we don't want too many people being directors of things. So I don't know, distribution maybe. Company will have to be from a list because we don't want anything crazy, like a pre-generated list. And then office phone, random. It's going to be a random based off of, the 3, 3, and 4. Division probably needs to be from a list, but the nice thing is that the divisions can all be from the same list. Departments, you don't want, I think probably every division, every division or every department should have the similar divisions. So maybe the department should have divisions. Maybe this should be like internal, I don't know. And then office, if this is office location, then this will be, I don't know. I don't know how we're going to do that yet. Unknown. To be determined. We'll figure that out later. Because it's not super important right now. It's all random data anyway. So effectively what this is going to do is we're going to have a separate list that we're going to add users to. So we take in all of the users from randomuser.me, and some of the users information is fine. A lot of the other parts of the users information has to be sort of fixed minorly, like 5880.Oaklawn Avenue or whatever. We need to make that capital O, capital L, capital A, and then other pieces of the data that need to be kind of supplemented. So for instance, we need to do U, and then we need to get the social, and we need to take out all the dashes. Ideally, you do not want to use a social security number for a we don't want to do that. So you don't want to use your social for something like that, but it's okay in this case. So what are we doing? Let's do this. Let's come down here. Let's make a new list. So let's call it fixed. Well, fixed users. That's implying a few things. It doesn't matter. We can call it better list, good list. I just call it fixed users. Now, I'm going to eventually return this list. I don't have to declare what type of list it is, though ideally you'd want to if you were dealing with a lot of crazy data, because we're subdividing out these functions and we're kind of compartmentalizing all of these tiny little things in functions like you should, solid principles, right? We don't have to really specify that this is going to be an object list or an object array or whatever. In fact, that might hurt us. So at open close parentheses is literally saying, yeah, it's a hash map. We're going to put stuff in it. Don't worry about it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to say for users, for that list, we're going to pipe that to the shorthand for each. There's totally a good case to be made for not using this shorthand, but I'm not going to make it right now because I think this looks fine. I think this looks great. Now, the for each element that you're probably used to seeing is something like for each, and then for each object. I think input object is something like users, and then I think the member name is going to be like what it actually is. No, we're not going to use that. We could even use for each, and then I think it'd be something like element in this. I think this is how it, I think that's also a valid way to use it. And that just gives us a nice named attribute or a named variable for each element inside of a collection. We don't need that. We can use the global attribute, the sort of generic global attribute that's, I say global, the predefined attribute for that, which is literally $_. This is each element at each iteration. So if we wanted to do users, if we wanted to look at, say we're going to get this exact set of information back. We wanted to look at .name or name.first. We would do $_ dot, and then because it's a string sort of stupid name up here, we have to name it name.first like that. And this would actually represent for each user this field. Well, sorry, this field. Which is nice because it's totally generic. We can reutilize this code. We don't have to copy and paste everything around. So this is going to be fine. So what we can do is, I'm not going to do anything in here because we see that some of this information just needs to be fixed basically. So I'm going to give examples of fixing this information in a very basic way. And then I'm probably going to end out this video because it's already been kind of long. I think it's been like, getting up there to like almost 3/4 of an hour. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use this in sort of a chain down here. I'm going to just divide this out into the main section. And typically, the way I like to do it, and I know this was supposed to be like a concept video and it turned into sort of specifically for this couple things. What I like to do is I like to have a main routine function. So a start main or a start, sort of a driver function, main routine. And what this allows me to do, it doesn't take anything in. What this allows me to do is it allows me to put all my logic that kind of kickstarts the thing here, which may be a lot of other function calls. And then at the very end of my entire script, there has to be something that actually starts the main routine, and that's just the call to start main routine. So line 72 in this case is what actually gets run that then jumps up to start main routine that would then drive all of these other things. That kind of makes sense, I hope. It's the same concept of this is your main method. But since you don't, well, technically this is your main method, but since you don't have the idea like you do in Java of a main method is going to be the first start, the starting point of your script, you have to have something to call your main method. That's what line 72 is doing in this case. It's calling this area. So what we would do is we would do something like get random users from web, and we type in, we want number, let's just say we get 10 users, just so we have some. We'd get that, and we want that to be what we send. So we can actually put that in parentheses, and then we can say fix users from web, and we want our, sometimes you have to hit space. Did I do this? Where's this parameter? Mandatory. Oh, maybe it doesn't know about it yet. Let me run that real quick. Fix users from web. No, what's it doing? Parameter mandatory true. Okay, well, it's not giving us the prompt, like the fill-in prompt. I'm wondering if there's a reason it's doing that. Let's go ahead and just print out the each username something really simple. So we'll do $equal, and we will do, let's do the username. So or email, that's easy, email. So when we run this, hopefully nothing bad happens. Yeah, it didn't. So it ran the main routine, and we see that it printed out 10 random users' email addresses. So effectively what it did was came down here, came up to here, it started running this code right here, but it realized, wait, this is a variable, so it jumped up to the get random users from web, gave it 10, so it came over here. It ran this, got 10 users back, brought it back down here, and then submitted that as the list of users for the fix users from web function. So then users became the return of this. And then we went ahead and created an empty list and then did some stuff with this. Notice how this is not, well, for the email it's fine, but for things like names or whatever, it probably wouldn't be that good. So last thing I'm going to leave you with, and then I'll upload another video because this one's getting a little long. What you can do is do something like this. You can upload I think you can do this. Maybe you can't do this. Let's try it. No, it definitely did not like that. There's a way to take this and create a title case, I believe. So let's see, how do we do this? I thought it was two title case, but I'm clearly wrong. Maybe we have to do something like, I don't know. Something like, yeah, two title case. Which is kind of a long way of doing it, but what it does is it gives us capital L, capital G, and then capital E, and then capital C, so it kind of creates the separate words and figures that out. So for if we were to do, instead of just email, let's do first name, or name.first rather. If we were to run this, we see that it definitely puts the capital letter at the front. But this is a little frustrating, so we might want to find a way to fix this, maybe even write it in a separate function that's not copying this much text around. Maybe do something like, in a utility function up here, do something like function, well, I'm not going to do that, you can do that. Okay, so I'm going to leave this where it is. I'm going to make another video a little bit later. I'm going to submit this to the repository. Some of you might see it, some of you might not. But if you have any questions, send me an email at mg@salu.edu. Remember that if you are going to run this, and if you're going to kind of take this and do a little bit more with it than we've done in this video, and you start doing things to Active Directory, do not affect any other user other than yourself. Try to subcontain anything that you're going to do, any edits or any changes into user base, and then maybe create an OU that is your W number. That'll probably happen in the next video. I'll show you how to do that. But if you wanted to look and maybe look up new AD organizational unit and then put that underneath user base, that'd be fine with me. Just don't destroy Active Directory, please. It's resilient, but not super resilient. And if you want to, start looking at how to create sub-objects of this. I know it's Mardi Gras break, but, or if this is a future class and I'm reusing the same information, I'm lazy and it's not Mardi Gras break, maybe. Just start thinking about this. Until next time, if you have any questions, send me an email. Bye.